The Early Weigh-In podcast is back this Saturday, going down UFC 313. Alex Pereira, Magomed Ankalaev. Long-awaited title fight, man. Super excited for this one. We got Fiziev stepping up on short notice for the rematch against Justin Gaethje. I'm excited to get into this pay-per-view, man. As always, want to recap last week. Positive night for both you and I, thanks to Nasrat Hack Press coming through for us. Cashed on the money line myself and the decision prop. Small loss on Andrea Lee. She looks like she should be on a 6-fight losing streak, and cut did not look good. Under 1.5, I know you in the Barlow Sam Patterson fight. Something else I know you made some money on as well. And I did start off the night 1.5 in the hole. Kind of dug my way out. I lost the parlay with Pinto inside the distance and the Danny Silva, Lucas Almeida not going the distance. But yeah, still finished up 2.26 units thanks to Nasrat. Throw it over to you. Let you recap before we jump into this card.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the Nasrat decision, I would have found myself on the wrong side of 3 split decisions on the night. So I was super happy about that. I had my biggest bet of the night on Sam Patterson over Danny Barlow. He cashed as a plus 188 underdog. Lucas Almeida over Danny Silva, a plus 220 split decision, even though I don't really agree it should have been a split decision.
Right.
I was happy with that at plus 220. And then probably trusted Gomes too much. I thought he won, to be honest with you, but after looking online, I seem to be in the minority, which stinks. I mean, honestly, he touched him how I thought he would. He just Emil was able to just completely walk through it.
Right.
Lee by decision didn't really have a chance. Austin Lane versus Mario Pinto over 1.5. Knew it would be tight butthole. It's almost there. Didn't happen though. And then, yeah, the Hack Press by decision really put it over the edge. I ended up plus 0.77 units, which, to three cards in a row that I've profited, but still not even over 2.5 units of profit. It's slow and steady, but I'm just happy to be in the green, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving on to the first fight of the night in the middleweight division, Ozzy Diaz taking on Jordan Santos. Man, it's a little bit of a sloppier fight. Both of these guys kind of on the cusp of UFC caliber. This fight taking place in Ozzy Diaz's true weight class of 185. He made his debut up against Mingyang Zhang, and it did not go as planned. Zhang turned out to be an absolute killer. He's looking to get back on track against Jordan Santos, who's a little bit of a questionable signing, if you ask me. He pulled through as a sizable underdog in the Contender Series against Will Curry. And although I thought it was a pretty decent performance, it more of just was like a fraud check for Curry than anything. What I did like about Santos was he was able to push a pretty good pace. And at only 6 foot, at 185 pounds, he is going to be a little bit undersized. Ozzy Diaz is actually kind of tipping the 185 scale at 6'4". But he is kind of laboring in his movement, and I think that it makes for a pretty easy target. So if Santos keeps his this technical striking together, like I saw in his Contender Series fight, I think he should be able to hit the target a little bit more. If he can withstand that early pressure of Diaz, I do expect Santos to start pulling away down the stretch. I do think he's the rightful favorite, but it's one of these fights that I think I'm happy to just kind of sit back, gather some information for both guys moving forward.
Yeah, man, I feel pretty dang similar about it, truth be told. If you're betting on Ozzy Diaz, I kind of get it. I touched on the market overcorrection as well, where you got a 2-3 to 1 dog to Will Curry, a very one-dimensional guy, and now you're a 2-1 favorite over Ozzy Diaz. So I do get it. He's also, like you said, back at 185, but I see the same thing. Very, very slow, very plodding. I think he's got bad defense and bad durability, and I like Jordan Santos to find success on the feet, and I don't think Diaz is going to have really much grappling success. So at some point, I do think Santos will probably find the finish, second, third round. Santos the pick. Easy pass for me as well, though, man. Looks like it's Gutierrez and Castaneda next, taking place at one. I know it says 135, but I'm pretty sure this is a 145 catch weight for both these guys who are kind of taking it on short notice. Gutierrez was supposed to fight on this card. Castaneda, lost his opponent last week. I don't really have too much to say here. I can't really say I'm super confident either way. The line reflects it's about a pick 'em. I think it goes to decision at like an 80% clip, 75% clip probably. And so I really can't get too confident on either side. I think Castaneda's volume's a little bit better. I think he's way more likely to, to mix it up. Chris has definitely fought the tougher slate of guys, though. He's just not too big of a finisher, not somebody I like to back. I'm going to go Castaneda split decision.
I find myself on the other side here. Chris Gutierrez, I just think he's a clean enough striker to kind of put on a similar pace as Daniel Marcos or Nathaniel Wood did. Mm-hmm. And I think he's going to be able to edge it out. I think those leg kicks will probably play a factor. Castaneda, he's a little stocky, a little heavy-footed whenever he is striking, even though he's super technical. I think that he is going to be open for those leg kicks to land. And, although it's by small margins, I do kind of lean the Chris Gutierrez side, but just barely. Moving up, we go to the featherweight division. Marion Santos taking on Francis Marshall. I'm a big fan of Marion Santos, man. He's got an insane build for 145 pounds, and I think he's really starting to put together a pretty dangerous arsenal at 24 years old. His last time out, pretty awesome knockout. We talked about that a little bit beforehand. And you have to go 3 years back whenever he was fighting at bantamweight to find his sole loss. It was against UFC, I guess veteran now, Dan Argueta. Argueta able to put that wrestling pressure on him. And considering the matchup that they've made here against Francis Marshall, it looks like the UFC is trying to see if he's patched those holes. Francis has kind of had a shaky start to his UFC career, but looking at the competition he was facing, it's understandable.
Yeah.
In his last fight against Dennis Bazooka, I think it left a little bit to be desired. On paper, it was kind of a perfect matchup for him to really showcase his skills, and he still went life and death with him. I think Santos is starting to patch these holes, and at 24, 25 years old, I do think he's going to be able to keep it on the feet for long enough to make Francis kind of fight outside of his comfort zone. But with the relentless pressure that Francis brings, I do think that he'll at least bank one round. So I'm looking at him plus 3.5 or completely pass here, because I do think that Santos is a little overpriced here at 3-4 to 1.
Yeah, I really like Marion Santos as a prospect as well. I think the guy moves very well. I like his footwork, his counter striking. Like mentioning that knockout, I think it's up there with some of the best of 2024. The way he's moving back, still hits the check left hook. I mean, dude, it's slick. I like what I see from the guy. But it's my first bet of the card, man. I got a half unit on Marshall here at plus 260, 265. I believe it's something along the lines of that. He's a tough dude, man. He's willing to walk into the fire. I've seen him in round 3 versus Gomes when he knew he needs a round, and he'll give you everything he's got, man. He's a young kid improving at a fast rate himself down at ATT, working with guys like Gamrot, Grant Dawson, guys where he needs to put on a wrestling clinic, I think, a wrestling game plan to go in here. And I think that's a great team, a great camp to be at, to be able to come in here and implement it. I want to reiterate, I think Santos is a phenomenal guy. I'm just not sold he should be 80% implied when I think he could spend minutes on his back here and potentially lose round 3 if it gets there. So I like what I see from him. He definitely has a striking advantage. But, give me Francis Marshall for a small underdog shot to start the night off. Moving on up, 170, Alex Morono, Carlos Leal. Man, pretty salty. I didn't cash my dog ticket on Carlos Leal last time out against Fakhretdinov. I do think if that wasn't in Abu Dhabi or the Middle East, I'd probably get the nod there. I think he's got the better cardio at this stage than Morono. He definitely hits so much harder. Dude looks juiced to the gills, and on the other side of Morono, it looks just kind of like a clear decline, man. He's lost 3 of his last 4, getting finished in all of them. And we kind of talked about it. Morono's a guy with very little finish upside unless he's very opportunistic with his submissions. And I don't want to back a big underdog when he's likely best path to victory is squeaking out a decision. So I like Leal. I think Leal's going to finish him. The under 2.5 at like minus 115, sitting close to a pick 'em is a little bit tempting to me because I think Leal's going to get him out of there.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to it. It's tough to tell where Morono is in his career right now. He's still being only 34. It's not like he's completely over the hill, but he's been in the game for a really long time. Leal seems to want it more. It's tough to go against his picking him in this spot. But truth be told, I don't think he's constituted anything as a minus 800 in the UFC. So it's really tough to back that as well. So yeah, I'll give Liel the edge here, but if he doesn't find a quick finish, like, he might be in for a little bit of a vet lesson and at least not cover that price tag. So it's a layoff spot for me. Moving up, we go to the middleweight division. Bruno Ferreira taking on Armen Petrosyan. It's a good matchup for both guys. Both of them somewhat one-dimensional in their fight style. Bruno looking to flatline you with that one shot on the feet, and Armen looking to turn it into a kickboxing match. Armen coming off of that knockout loss against Shara Bullet is, certainly concerning, especially considering he's up against a knockout artist here. But it's tough to look past that. I think Armen is the better striker of the two here. I think he has a little bit cleaner technique, and also he has the size to keep out of the range of those big looping shots of Bruno. That being said, I do think if this fight does play out on the ground, that Bruno would likely look like the favorite there. And then there's always the chance that he's able to find that chin. I have to lean Petrosyan, but it's not something that I want to trust him at juice at. So, right now it's a layoff spot, but if I see him, gain the traction that I've been seeing on Twitter and the line starts moving down and we get Petrosyan at dog odds, I would certainly look to play him because I think this fight takes place on the feet, and I think he's the better striker of the two.
Yeah, to me, this is one of the tougher fights to call on the card. I do see Petrosyan having kickboxing success at range. He's a guy you can pretty much rely on some decent volume from him and throw out kicks a whole lot just to kind of win the minutes, while he's at range. But if any knockdowns are coming out of this fight, if any big moments, if there's any grappling, I do think it favors the underdog here. And if there's one guy who will go out there and, fight hard for my money, it's the underdog here. So, Bruno's a guy who's never been to the scorecards. He's finish reliant throughout his career. And I do think as it slips later in this fight, Petrosyan might start to take over. But I'm very tempted to bet the underdog here. You talk about money coming in on him. It was plus 130 I have in my notes when I was jotting them down at lunch today. It's plus 120 on the same book. So he's definitely taking some action. You might get your better line on Petrosyan by Saturday, and it might just be enough for me to pass altogether. But yeah, give me the underdog, Bruno Ferreira. I like him to get the job done inside the distance. Another fight I'm pretty pumped for. I like this 125 fight between Rai Tatsura, Josh Van. I see a lot of love for Josh Van online, and the line has honestly come against him. I kind of see the cardio dynamic, the stylistic comparisons to like a Cody Durden that people are trying to take advantage of. Two big issues for me, man, is the defensive grappling for Van has always been his weak point to his game, and we know Rai's going to test that. And two, Van's a notoriously just slow starter, constantly giving away round one. And then, again, combine that with the way I expect Rai to come out pretty hot and land these takedowns. I think you're going to get a better number on Josh Van after round one if he's able to stay safe and not get submitted. I love his boxing. I love his cardio, love his body work. So I do think that he wins round three at a super big clip, and I think Rai Tatsura probably is going to win round one at a super big clip, and round two is going to be that round that's up in the air. People think they're getting screwed on the scorecards if there's no decision or if it goes to decision. So there's more than enough to keep me off the minus 190s out there on Josh Van. It's dog or pass to me, and I really hate to make a pick without seeing round one. But I do think Josh Van is going to eke it out down the stretch with the boxing. Give me Josh Van, round three or decision.
Yeah, I'm starting to lose a little bit of faith in Josh Van, dude. He's becoming the Kulabau of 125, in my opinion. And I don't know, man. This is a tough matchup when, like you said, he's going to be dropping that first round at a pretty high clip. Hate to just trust it because I do think the Tatsura, or how you say his last name? Saruya, has at least enough cardio to bank him those 2 rounds.
Right.
So for me, it's Tatsura or pass. Yeah, man, I certainly can't trust Josh at this point at those type of odds. So it's a pass or the dog here, but I don't have too much to add. probably just looking to see how these guys look post-fight, look to fade them in the future. Moving on to the prelim main event in the heavyweight division, Curtis Blades taking on Rizvan Kuniev. Definitely one I want to wait until weigh-ins before I really make a move on this fight. Rizvan, he's popped for PEDs in the past, and when he came into his Contender Series debut, he looked bad, in my opinion, man. If he comes in looking like his PFL days, I do think that he has the skills to make this fight look competitive. He's a full-size heavyweight. He has a lengthy background in combat sports. But I do think that he's up against his toughest competition to date in Curtis Blades. Blades coming off yet another first-round knockout loss. It's tough because when he does get his chance to showcase his full skill set, we all know how good he is. But in the weight class, there's such a small margin for error. Unfortunately, Curtis just can't get out of his own way. In this matchup, I do think that it's Curtis Blades to lose. I think he's better just about everywhere. And if he can push that pace, I think that he melts Rizvan later in the later rounds. But he's certainly going to need to avoid those early shots from him. But I got to go Curtis Blades here.
I bet 1.66 units. Fight doesn't go the distance at minus 166. Little over 60%. I think there's about a 7-8% edge there. I think that should sit just slightly north of probably 70%. And I do have a half unit on the underdog Kuniev at plus 260. When Blades loses inside the distance. I've also seen Blades early in round one against Jalton Almeida be taken down, and I do think that's the game plan Kuniev's going to come in here with. Blades' defensive grappling, something that we haven't really seen tested. And he really isn't one to always use his offensive grappling either. So his fight IQ can be thrown out the window. On the other side, this could absolutely be the fight that Blades is just, leaps and bounds better than Kuniev here and absolutely runs through him. Blades is the better striker on the feet. He is the better athlete. And I do think he's going to have his opportunities to get the finish. But I also, again, think Kuniev's going to have equal opportunity to find his way on top and potentially in the clinch and finish Blades. So I'm big on fight finishing inside the distance here. Would love to cash a Kuniev underdog bet at the same time. Moving on up the card, kicking off the main card, men's lightweight division, we got Bobby King Green taking on Mauricio Rufy. To me, it kind of is clear to me what the UFC wants. They're using Bobby Green again as a stepping stone for one of their more exciting prospects, as they've been doing here lately. Both of them kind of fight similar, prefer to keep it standing, have their hands down, kind of showboating style. The longer that fight goes on, I do kind of think Bobby becomes a little bit more live. I do think his cardio and volume is definitely more proven down the stretch. I'm just worried that the fight honestly doesn't get out of round one. I think Bobby's durability is really declining. And I think if Rufy lands on him clean, I think we're going to see Bobby go down. This is one of the first fights that I taped. The under 1.5 on BetOnline was plus 185 when I taped it. It's now plus 135 on some other books. So a lot of people are kind of seeing what I do. When you have a minus 500 in Rufy, who's historically been pretty finish reliant guy, I think 70% of his finishing upside is in that under 1.5 in the first 7.5 minutes. So I've kind of been tempted to look at that under 1.5. I haven't mentioned to you Bobby Green decision only was plus 180. If it goes to decision, I'd love to have that ticket. So there's a couple props that I've looked at, but gun to my head, man, I kind of think Rufy gets him out of there in the first round.
So I kind of lean the over in this fight. I think that this will turn into kind of a pitter-patter kickboxing match, man. Rufy has been really lucky to have opponents who bring a pace to him, and Lontop and Malarkey. Like, those are people that are going to allow him to showcase that counter-striking Conor McGregor-esque style of his. So I think that Bobby Green's not going to give him that fight. He's going to look to be the faster of the guy. And I think we're going to be playing a game of inches for about 15 minutes. One thing I will say is going from Lontop to Bobby Green is a pretty big switch up. Yeah. I know he trains for all types of styles, but Green's going to be extremely fast in there. And I do think that given his awkward style, it might be something that Rufy has a difficult time adjusting to, at least early. But I do think that he's going to carry the power into the later rounds, and he does seem to keep a good enough pace if he can not follow Bobby Green and start to cut him off. Could put him into some problematic situations. So I do think that he could find a finish, but I think it'll take some feeling out before he figures out Bobby Green enough to land the knockout shot. Let's see, moving up the card, Amanda Lemos taking on Yasmin Lucindo in the strawweight division. I tend to agree with the opening odds for this fight, where Lemos was a small favorite. I think people are trying to draw comparisons with Verna's wrestling success in Lemos's last fight and the potential success that Lucindo has in the wrestling department in this fight. And I'm just not convinced that those are things that we can really draw too many comparisons to. I think by the time that Lucindo does move to her wrestling, it's going to be after she feels the power of Lemos, and it might just be a little bit too late for her to get that success. On the feet, I do expect a close fight, but I think that the power is going to steal the moments of the fight that weigh the most on the judges in the judges' eyes. Lucindo's youth and the volume that she puts out there is why I won't be playing this too hard. But I do think that Lemos should be the favorite here. Maybe even leaning on experience and just higher level fights and being able to maintain how dangerous she is in the striking in those 15 minutes as opposed to 25 minutes that she's been doing.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I tried to fade Lucindo last time out with Marina Rodriguez. Maybe could have gotten the nod there. But I'm not as eager to go back to the well here, so I'm probably just going to pass altogether. Lemos to me, amazing power, not typically something I kind of like to bet on her back at women's 115 pounds. And she has no defensive grappling. She's 38 years old. Post-title run makes me think, where's the motivation and things at? So Lucindo being 14 years younger, having that volume edge, having what I think is a speed edge, and in the potential to ground her, the line kind of feels a little right to me. I think personally I would have Lucindo just a very, very small favorite. So I don't know how much meat on the bone there is either way, but I've tried to fade Lucindo again, so I have no problem with people trying to get on board with Amanda Lemos. And if you do, man, best of luck to you. I think Lucindo's going to just etch out a decision, man. Not too keen on either one of those fighters. Man, getting into the meat of my card, Jalen Turner versus Bahamondes at 155. Little over a unit and a half on Turner to return a unit and a half. Like the main event, man, that we'll get into, this line, I'll be honest with you, the line kind of shocked me. I was expecting to watching tape and waiting to go look at this line. I kind of expected to potentially be taking a shot on Ignacio as an underdog. I have him in the fantasy league as well, so not a fan of this matchup, but having him in the fantasy league, kind of wanted to bet him as well. Expecting to go see a minus 300 next to Jalen Turner's name, like it is with every other person. The guy's been a 2-1 favorite over Hooker, Moicano, Bobby Green, and here he is sitting now at plus 105 to Bahamondes. I kind of line Turner around 58 to 60% here. I think he should be closer to a minus 150. I do think he's got a big edge and power on the feet. I think he does a little bit more better job of cutting off the cage and setting down on his punches when he does land. I think while his durability might not be as good, I think his defense on the feet is much better. Bahamondes is there to be hit. I also think that he's a better grappler. If Turner finds himself on top, this will by far be the biggest guy at 155 who's taken Bahamondes down. He's the best jiu-jitsu of anybody Bahamondes has fought at 155. So my really only concern is the gas tank of Turner. And I think if that's the issue, it's likely because of some front-loaded success, and I can hop on Bahamondes live to kind of hedge out of that position. But, yeah, I like Jalen Turner to get this job done, man, and in love with the line as well.
Yeah, I have to agree. I have Jalen Turner in the fantasy league, and I'm happy with that position as well. As the line moves up, I guess I'm just kind of sitting on it, and I think we're getting a buy low spot in somebody who's had some recent, problems, but he's an excellent fighter, and we just haven't gotten to see that showcase because he's fighting some of the best guys in the division. Bahamundes super hittable, and Jalen Turner's not a guy that you want to get hit by. Bahamundes has not been knocked out yet, which is something that is a little bit cause for concern because we have seen Jalen Turner slow down over 3 rounds. So if he is still there in that last round, it could get a little hairy. But I do think that Jalen Turner has enough that he's going to put the pressure on him in those first 2 and at least bank that if we do see the judges' scorecards, if he isn't able to capitalize and find a finish. But yeah, Jalen Turner's the pick for me. Happy to get him at plus money. Moving on to the co-main event, Justin Gaethje taking on Rafael Fiziev in their rematch. At 155 pounds. I think this deserves to be a 5-round fight, but I am glad that they booked it at least. We both, I think, cashed on Gaethje in the first fight. It was a controversial decision, but I was definitely happy to cash him as like a plus 200 dog, I think.
Right. Yeah.
He finds himself as an underdog again coming into this rematch. And I got to say it's tempting not to go right back to the well for me. The most convincing round of their fight was the third, in my opinion, and Gaethje really started to find his rhythm. With Fiziev coming off of injury, I would agree that he does seem to hold, advantages in the striking matchup, considering his coaching and striking background. But I do think that this one, just the matchup itself is kind of bound to produce another close fight where we're really relying on the judges to make the right call in real time. And, if Gaethje wasn't coming off of this knockout loss, it'd be a much easier play. But I do think that it's dog or pass here. I trust Trevor Whitman to put together a pretty solid game plan. And Justin's wrestling background at least gives him more options to rely on, even if that isn't something that he traditionally does. So for me, I think it's Gaethje or pass, but I do wish that we would still get the 2-1 favorite odds for me to play it. But I think it's close. So I'm going to go Gaethje here, but not with like a ton of conviction.
Yeah, I felt like you and I were on an island taking Gaethje, and I think you're right. It was like plus 190, plus 200 that we bet him at. That was actually when I was on vacation, and so I did not get to watch that fight. I actually tuned in round 3 where Gaethje lands like his first takedown in his history of being in the UFC. Principle-wise, you and I were on the right side of that at that number. But I did get to watch the fight back for the first time this week. Even having a bet on Justin, I kind of felt like Fiziev might have should have gotten the nod there. And now here I am getting him. I bet him at minus 132 to win a unit, 57% implied. I now see a guy, I know he's coming off ACL tear, but in 2025, I don't know how much that really hinders guys coming back. He looks more than ready. He's been calling for fights. He looks ready, in my opinion, and I do think it favors him being 3 rounds. If this was 5 rounds, you would not see me on the Fiziev side. But now you got a guy who's almost 6 years younger, way better striker, I think so much faster. A lot of the finish equity, you talked about the KO for Justin, and that's a big talking point for me. I know Max is a 145er, got some of the best boxing and footwork, but Justin looked a little slow to me, looked like he couldn't find anything that he wanted to. And we're talking about one of the most brutal knockouts that we've seen in a long time, a guy who's taken a shit ton of damage throughout his career, and I wouldn't be shocked if it happens again. So, yeah, I'm on Fiziev. I think he should be about a minus 175. So I was happy. Minus 132. It is trending that direction. Gaethje's a highlight reel, though, and there's not many guys on the roster that I can think of that are going to fight for your underdog ticket the way Justin Gaethje will. So it's never a bad bet, never a bad click when you're getting a plus money on Justin Gaethje. Main event, long-awaited fight, man, between Alex Pereira, Magomed Ankalaev. I got 2 units, Ankalaev plus 100. To me, I think this has kind of been the long-awaited match for the long time. I think they've kind of been keeping Pereira from Ankalaev, truth be told, because the UFC hasn't had a big star. This is a guy who's fought, I think, 5 times in the last calendar year, headlined UFC 300. And at a point, you kind of do have to protect your moneymaker. And so I get it. I think now you can't deny Ankalaev a spot, though. And here we are, where the whole world was lining up to bet Jiri Prochazka twice, where everybody's betting Jamal Hill. And because of some potential leg kicks, we're not all over Ankalaev here at plus 100, man. I think Ankalaev can absolutely hold his own on the feet. I think he's more durable of the two. And if this guy comes out with any ounce of IQ and wrestles, he could look a minus 300 favorite, man. I think Alex's takedown defense is absolute shit no matter what anybody says. He's so upright. He's slow. I don't know, man. The way he reacts to shots, everything. I like Ankalaev. Like most people, think he's been the uncrowned champ for a while. He's just kind of been his own worst enemy. So happy to play him. More than happy to get plus 100 because I think he should be a 60% favorite. So 2 units Ankalaev and new.
Yeah, this is kind of like a head versus heart type matchup for me because you're right. Like my head tells me that Ankalaev has so many more ways to win this fight. If he does rely on his wrestling, he could just go out there and look like a cakewalk. But man, he's just one of those fighters who it's tough to trust him because he's shown time and time again he does have it's weird. He has, great IQ, but the worst IQ at the same time, man. If he's going to make all of these close, it's just somebody like Alex Pereira is not somebody who you can mess up against. You can get away with some of that stuff against Jan Blachowicz, but you give Pereira the same opportunities, like he's going to capitalize on them. I do like that it seems like the public's all over Pereira. Like if Ank gets up there even more, I'll probably find myself on him as well. But it's tough to go against Pereira, man. Like I don't know, momentum is a real thing in this sport, and he has all of the momentum. And if Ankalaev does go out there and even for a moment gets kind of caught up in the lights, this is just it's not going to be his night, man. So this is for right now, a layoff spot. But if I see in the face-offs Ankalaev sizing up well, if he looks ready, I'm totally okay with jumping on him, especially if he continues to stay at dog odds. He just has so many more paths to victory. It's really hard to look past that. But I will be rooting for Alex Pereira because I want Alex Pereira to be John Jones's retirement fight. So if he can do this one and we could set up that Jones versus Pereira retirement fight, I'd be one happy camper. So give me Pereira here. But at the end of the week, if I do find myself on the Ankalaev side, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yes, man. That's all 12 fights going down. UFC 313, light heavyweight strap up for grabs. Next week, I think we're back at the Apex, and would you guess it? Middleweight main event. Marvin Vettori, Roman Dolidze 2. Super pumped super easy to get pumped up for that one. Make sure to like and subscribe. As always, we appreciate you guys watching. Let us know your best bet in the comments and everything. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.